to another episode of Books, Kids, and Creations, a part of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I am your host, Tracy Bloom, and I am here today with Seána Walsh. Seána is a children's theater teacher and director who lives in a little house called Dandelion Burrow in the wilds of Western Massachusetts, which sounds adorable and magical. You are also a teacher, a longtime teacher of about 20 years, elementary school, and you also run a camp and teach children how to make musicals. What a wonderful person you are. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. That was the nicest thing I've heard all week.
We all need nice things. We all need nice things. So, Seána, thank you for being here. And I really want to talk a lot about who you are as a person and as a writer. So why don't you start off by talking about how you got into writing, and then we can move on to some other important topics like your new book and the work that you do.
All right. Well, before I was a writer, I was a reader. So I was an absolutely voracious reader as a child. I was the kind of kid whose mom had to take her to the library every Saturday growing up. She would let me take out as many books as I could carry, but that was it. And usually by the time we got home, which was maybe a 10-minute drive, I'd already read one of the books. I always kind of knew that I wanted to be a writer, but I was nearly deterred in my passion for writing because in 4th grade, we got our very first creative writing assignment and I got a C on it. I think I had written some kind of like child horror story about kids doing battle with monsters in the woods, and maybe my teacher didn't like the subject matter, but luckily I did not give up. And so I just kept on writing.
That's awesome. I know actually from doing like some school visits, a lot of kids are really into like those sort of topics, and I'm always like, like that's not my thing, but there's a ton of kids that are really into that, like scary stories, spooky stories, and haunted forests. So
absolutely.
So
you gotta have material for the spooky little kids.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed your new book, Maisie and the Clootie Tree, and I went, what's a Clootie Tree? And so there's a lot of mythology in this story. There's a lot of Scottish heritage in there. So are you Scottish?
Actually, I'm mostly of Irish heritage. I have like this much Scottish heritage, and I think it's from Northern Ireland. I did a DNA test. That's the only reason I know. But I did actually go and live in Scotland for 2 years after college. So that's how I got really acquainted with Scottish culture. And I've read a lot of fantasy and mythology and history. And so for my book, what I did was I researched things that I had heard of just to make sure I got them right.
Yeah. I've been just every year we try to plan a trip to Scotland, and because of COVID, it's just been kind of thwarted. So I think I've looked up so many places in Scotland. So when I read your story, I was like, oh, this is so wonderful. I mean, I was wondering if you had been there. So obviously you have. And so I'm assuming that a lot of those places probably inspired, and a lot of things that you encountered probably inspired this story.
Absolutely.
And
it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, it looks like it. One day I'll go. So another piece of your book that really kind of tugged at the heartstrings, especially for me, because my mother passed away from breast cancer. One of the main characters in the story is sick with cancer, the mother. And so what was the inspiration for that piece of the book? Did you know somebody who had cancer or passed from cancer?
I did. So while I was growing up, 2 of my mother's sisters, my mother's one of 7 kids, they both actually got breast cancer at the age of 40, both at the same time, like, and they're only 2 years apart. So it was like,
yeah.
And so I actually watched them both go through the process of chemotherapy and losing their hair. And I remember being a kid and we used to put their wigs on and run around the house, you know, these were kids.
Yeah.
And we were so very, very lucky that they both survived. But as an adult, actually, my own mother, she passed of CPD, and it's chronic pulmonary, what have you. I wish I the whole name of it. And she, it was a very long illness, and it was very upsetting to watch. And right after my mother passed, I lost a student of mine to cancer. And so that was really what made me finish the story that I had kind of been writing to deal with my own grief.
Yes.
I looked at my daughter, who at the time, she's 13 now. This was probably, 5 years ago. And I was like, how is my daughter dealing with all this? Like, how is she looking at my mom? And what's her understanding of what's happening? And so I thought, there needs to be more books on grief.
Yes.
For kids, and how you can use your grief and channel it into sort of creativity.
Yeah. That was one of the most beautiful pieces of the book that, I mean, you look at, I'm like getting teary thinking about it. Like,
I'm gonna cry if you cry.
No crying. But all the emotions that your character goes through to show that love and to show the mother just how much she's like believing and hoping and picking up on that magic and tying into the folklore and all that. And I went, I wish I did that for my mom.
Oh, you know what? Me too. But you're in survival mode when your mother is sick. It's not like you're sitting around going, what creative project could I do with my mother today to show her that I love her?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you do what you can.
Yeah. And the illustrations of your book were so stunning. And what was it like to work with your illustrator on those?
I was so lucky. So my illustrator's family is actually from Wales. And so Wales has a lot of common mythology with Scotland and with Ireland. And so this was something she was really familiar with. She was already a working artist, and I'd seen a lot of her stuff online, and it's full of fairies and fantastical creatures. And I was like, this is the person that I want to work with.
Yeah.
And so my publisher contacted her, and luckily she said yes. And I actually had kind of unheard of access to her. Sometimes publishers don't foster any communication between the author and the publisher, but she and I talked a lot, which was great.
Yeah, it felt like you guys were like one with each other with the words. And even one of the illustrations was of the Silky character.
Yes.
And it was like the transition of what I don't know, like it was just so magical and so beautiful how she created those images that went right with your story. It was so pretty.
Her work is beautiful. So if you look her up online, it's gorgeous. She has a lot of paintings for sale. I don't know, just promote her work, but it's gorgeous.
And her name is Megan Day Afon Walker.
Yes.
Okay. I had to get it all written down before. But yeah, her work was stunning, and the book is stunning too. And then you have another book coming out. What is that? Is that kind of in the same vein, or is this completely different, this new book?
It's totally different. It's also based on my family. Anne of Green Gables, I don't know if you're an Anne fan.
Oh yeah.
But she always talked about writing what you know in the story. And so that's what I've done. So when I was a little girl, my grandmother took me and my cousin into a room, and she pulled out this little jewelry box, and she opened it up, and inside was a saint's medallion, just a little, it might have been the Virgin Mary. I just remember looking at it and being like, oh, and she was like, this was on the Titanic. And I was like, whoa.
Cool.
And so my grandmother, who was not like a fanciful sort of person, she was very much, like this. She wasn't doing plays or writing books. She tells me this story that a man, before he set sail on the Titanic, gave this to his daughter. And I was like, oh, that's so nice. But she actually got the story a little bit mixed up. And what really happened was that this woman that my family knew, she was a nun, had taken a shine to my mom's sister and given her this medallion, which she had worn on the Titanic herself because she was a Titanic survivor. And before she left Ireland, her father had taken this chain off his neck and given it to his daughter, tied a knot in the chain and said, when I see you again, I'm going to untie the knot.
Wow.
And she never saw her father again. And the knot was in the chain. And she came to America. She had lost friends on the Titanic. And so maybe in her grief, or maybe she had some sort of calling, she became a nun, got to know my family. And that's how I know her story. And so
Wow.
it's all about her.
Wow, that's really cool. So is it going to be a picture book or is it more like a chat? Okay, picture book. Okay.
It's a picture book, and Megan did the illustrations for this one too, and they're beautiful. Everything's sort of in blues and purples. I cannot wait to see it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, there's nothing like seeing your story brought to life with illustrations. Like it's like Christmas morning when you get the copies of even the black and white sketches and you go, oh, look at it, look at it. You know, it's like, it's so exciting.
I was definitely showing people at work.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was supposed to keep it secret, but I was like,
I do that too. I'm like, maybe I'll show a few people. Yeah. And so let's see. So you also do a lot of work with children in your day job as a teacher, but you also do a lot of work with children in theater. So how did you get into children's theater? And
all right, well,
what's that like?
when I was young, I started doing dance, starting when I was like 2, right? And then I transitioned into doing musical theater myself. And actually, when I was in college, I studied opera. And I decided that I'm not a very competitive person. I really want everybody to sort of make it. So I decided when I was in college, what I wanted to do was work with kids and sort of build up their self-esteem. So now as an adult, I work in a lot of different arts programs, but I have a program where I have this year 45 because of COVID. In past years, like 60 kids. And I teach kids to write their own musicals.
Wow.
We're doing one right now based on the legend of the Baba Yaga, which is from Russia. The kids write the plot. Like first we read a whole bunch of children's books to get them well researched. We write the plot. We sit down with local musicians and the kids help write lyrics and write their own music. Like we have little recorders and the kids sing melodies into the recorders, and then we take them and we put them all together. And then the musicians come and they play for the show, which is really exciting to the kids to have like local rock stars playing their music. And then, so that's wonderful. And in the summer, I'm part of a program called Shiprock and Anchordog, which is a very interesting name. And it's the story about these 2 dogs who travel the world and the universe. And they teach people about things like sustainable farming, empathy, inclusion, like all the good things, right? And we put on this rock opera every summer with kids where they sing about these 2 dogs and all the lessons that they impart.
That sounds like the best thing on earth.
It really is amazing. If you listen to the music, it's shiprockandanchordog.com. It's beautiful. The man who runs it, he's like the next Mr. Rogers. I'm absolutely convinced. Like he's the world's nicest person and all he wants to do is make music with kids.
Oh, that sounds incredible. And I'm sure that through your work and through his work, you guys are really changing the lives of so many children. I mean, probably inspiring them to get more involved in theater and get more involved in music and really find what speaks to them.
I really hope so.
Yeah, because it's funny for kids nowadays how they have so much technology and so much things that are different. And so I think it's a little bit challenging for them to find that spark of creativity because it's not really in their present lives as much as I think it was for probably us growing up. I mean, I was in nature a lot. I was always writing. I was always like, immersed in things that could inspire. So that's so cool that you're doing that. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for that, when does that come out? Like, is it like an annual thing that they do, or is it?
Shiprock?
Yeah.
It is every summer. I've been doing
Every
it for
summer. Okay.
10 years now.
Wow. Okay, cool. Well, I'll post a link in the video here so people can check it out too.
Okay.
Yes. And aside from your new books coming out, all of the work you're doing in theater. Is there anything else on the horizon for you that you'd like to talk about?
Goodness, but I'm working on my first adult novel. I don't want to give any like major details yet because this is a stretch for me.
Yes.
But I'm on page 165. I was really excited. I started doing it during November for the NaNoWriMo challenge. Also, let's see, what else is going on? I actually help run Renaissance fairs.
Yes.
And so we've started a new one. It's going to be a nonprofit Renaissance fair that's going to be happening in New England. Really excited about that. And that should be happening this September.
That's amazing. So my husband is a blacksmith.
What? Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so we know a whole like network of blacksmiths. So if you ever need any blacksmiths for your Renaissance fair, I think we know.
I totally will.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love finding random Rennies. It just makes me so happy.
Yeah. The Renaissance festivals look really cool. And I bet that you probably can sell a lot of your books there too.
Yeah, I do actually. At a Ren Fair in October, I have my first author signing. So pretty excited about that.
Exciting. And that's really cool that you're also kind of venturing out into novels, because that's a big step. I mean, I did that, my first adult novel last year, but it was completely outside my wheelhouse. It was something that I was like, I don't think I can do this. It's not my territory. I don't write this way. I don't write scary stuff, but like it was really challenging. And I worked with somebody called a teaching editor. So it was she herself is a best-selling USA Today best-selling author, but she edits as well. And so she taught me how to write in this genre. And it was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. Like I was like, I feel like I had a mentor for like a year helping me write this thing, but it was something to be proud of. So yay for you for going into novels. That's so exciting.
You should pass me her name. I'm
really intrigued. Yeah, I'll send an email.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it has been such a pleasure having you here today, and I look forward to seeing all that you do. And thank you so much for being a part of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.